Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dottie Gallagher, the President and CEO of the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, where we're going to discuss the results of our 2018 survey of Buffalo Niagara young professionals. This is our second annual survey, and it was conducted through BN360, our Young Professional Development and Engagement Program. As I'm sure you know, professionals between the ages of 21 and 40 are critical to the health of any economy, but in our economy, it's especially important as we're working on our resurgence and facing an aging workforce and needing to replace people in our workforce. As you know, young professionals represent future home buyers and people whose discretionary incomes will support retail and service sectors, and we need to do everything we can not only to attract them to our region, but to retain them here as well. This survey and its results are our first step in understanding their opinions and preferences. Today, we're going to talk about an action plan that employers can use to help retain YPs in your organization. We'll also share key findings from the survey and drill down into the opportunities that young professionals themselves have identified as being priorities in our region. And we'll make sure to give you a demographic breakdown of our survey respondents. Before we do that, though, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Bond, Shenick & King. They graciously sponsored this year's survey, and on behalf of the partnership, I'd like to thank them for their support. The law firm of Bond, Shenick & King understands the value that young professionals hold for our community and is committed to their development. Within their own law firm, Bond promotes the development of young lawyers by providing mentoring, continuing education, an in-depth performance review process, and networking opportunities. They encourage their associates to participate in pro bono work, providing excellent training opportunities not otherwise found at the early stages in their professional development. In addition, Bond is proud to be a partner and sponsor of BN360 overall to help empower, support, and promote opportunities for all young professionals in our region. To learn more about them, visit their website at bsk.com. So let's get started. Between 2010 and 2015, the population of young professionals in the Buffalo Niagara region grew by 6.8%. And those of you who have been around for a while probably remember that for decades we suffered a terrible brain drain in our community and the loss of young professionals. So this was a great and wonderful bellwether to a resurgence. But as a small warning, in 2016 we took our first small step backwards, and that population has decreased by 0.5 percentage point. You may have seen recent news reports that New York State lost about 48,000 residents in the last census and was the greatest population loss of any state during that time period. So that combined with this data point, of course, gives us pause and concern. We don't know if this is just a blip or the early signs of a trend. We do know that the end of the baby boomerang generation, the natural lift that we've had for residents who are the children of baby boomers, is coming to its natural end. So the 5-year trend looking forward looks as if we're not going to be maintaining this level of young professionals naturally. That doesn't mean that we can't create an environment to attract young professionals to our region to bend that trend. So the Census Bureau projection shows that by 2022, our region will lose almost a full 1% of our population of adults between the ages of 25 and 34. And over that same time period, elsewhere in the country, nationwide, that population will grow by about 4%. So we're looking at a 5% gap in adults ages 25 to 34 in our region as compared to the country at large. It's important to understand that we need to double down on attracting and retaining young professionals, and that's why we do this survey. And their opinions and preferences and ways to plug them into the community at large is how we will keep them here in our future. And that's really why we conduct this survey, and this was our second annual survey. And the insights are results from over 880 young professionals throughout our region who took the survey. To give you a sense of context, that's nearly double the sample size of our inaugural survey last year. And we want to thank all of the other young professional groups in the community that really helped us spread the word. And we know that the larger sample size gives us a more representative and descriptive picture of what matters to YPs, but I think it's important to show, and we will talk about a little bit, that our demographics of those who took the survey slightly differ from the demographics at large. So that's just a little warning sign as we go forward. So as we go through the numbers, you're going to see, you'll notice that they don't sum to 100%. That's because we've rounded in many cases. But we have in all of our groups one respondent survey that we're so happy to report, and that 95% of all respondents would recommend the Buffalo Niagara region as a place to live, work, and play. And that's important because, you know, there's an old adage in public relations that says your image is only as good as your employees say it is. So unless people who live here feel like this is a great place to live, it's hard for them to promote it externally. So that's a really great number for us. When we asked them why, 35% said the affordable cost of living, and 25% said the people, and 22% said it's because of the variety of things to do. And those of us even who are older than YPs probably agree that those are the highlights of why we all love living here. 69% of survey respondents say they do see opportunities for career growth for themselves in the region, but alarmingly, 31% said they don't. But of that 31%, the majority of them, 86%, said they would still recommend the region, and that's because of our affordable cost of living. We'll get into why they don't see themselves here in a little bit. In the next 10 years, 81% of our survey respondents see themselves living here, and this is important because we need to keep them here, and the majority of the young professionals who are here want to stay. So when you ask that 31% why they might leave, 40% said they'd leave for work. 31% said they'd leave because of their desire to see new places. And two other reasons why not only young people want to leave are the weather and the taxes. But before we move off of this, I think it's important to just stop to say that 40% who say they're going to leave because of work, many of them don't believe that there are opportunities for career growth in their own individual profession. And we are not sure how much of that is perception and reality, but it is something that is an important factor when we look at growing the future of our young professionals. When it comes to the top issues facing our region, we saw different answers when we looked at the survey respondents of people of color and people who were not of color. And I think it's important to call those out. Looking at the answers submitted by all survey respondents, 22% identified K-12 education in the city of Buffalo as the most critical issue facing the region. But looking at answers, when you look at them from respondents of color, 27% identified racial equity as the most critical issue. We asked survey takers to tell us what they thought was our region's top opportunity for growth. 31% identified waterfront development. That's great, especially when you look at all the development that's happening at Canal Side and the Outer Harbor. These developments do a lot to enhance the quality of life and create a real destination where people want to spend their discretionary income and hang out, quite honestly. It's important to know that as quality of life is really important to young professionals, and I think that we have that in spades, actually. To go back to the highlight of people of color identifying racial equity as an issue, I forgot to mention that when we surveyed our members overall, creating a more diverse workforce is a priority of our employers. So when we see that a significant percentage of people of color who took our survey of young professionals are concerned about racial equity, that's something that employers overall need to pay attention to in order to create a more diverse workforce for themselves. Let's take a deeper dive into the top issues. When we look at the top issues identified by all young professionals, we see K-12 education in the city of Buffalo. We see public transportation options and business growth and the number of available job opportunities. But again, when we narrow that data to the top issues identified of young professionals of color, other issues bubble up. As I mentioned, racial equity, K-12 education in the city of Buffalo, cost of housing, and the perception of Buffalo tied for third place. So when you look at these top sets of top issues side by side, you see there's not a lot of overlap. So this tells us that young professionals really look at the issues and challenges facing our region through their own personal lens and through their own personal experience. When we drill down into what the survey respondents identified as our region's top opportunities for growth, we see some hot topics that we also consider important to our region: waterfront development, the redevelopment of buildings in downtown Buffalo, and tourism and visitor promotion. We've already talked a little bit about waterfront development, and we know there's a lot of development still happening there. But when it comes to redevelopment of buildings downtown, there's been quite a bit in the news. In 2018 alone, when you look at the downtown core and buildings around downtown, we've had over 10 project completions, 100 new hotel rooms, and 213 residential units completed. Actually, when you look at the number of downtown housing units that have been created since 2011, from 2007, we're looking at over 1,000 units and an increase of downtown population of over 10%. We also know there are other projects still percolating in the pipeline, including some work that M&T Bank is doing. And quite honestly, through our downtown housing study, we saw there is still going to be demand for downtown residential housing for the next 5 years. In terms of tourism and visitor promotion, I have to shout out to my friends at Visit Buffalo Niagara. It seems like Buffalo's been on the top of every top 10 list that was released in 2018. And most recently, we were named one of the top 10 cities for millennial homebuyers. And this is a great factoid, especially when we just reviewed how the cost of housing is so important to young professionals. We know that people around the country are realizing that Buffalo is more than snow and chicken wings, and it's paying off in terms of an economic boost. And that's the beginning of really selling a message that Buffalo is not only a great place to visit, but a great place to live. And that's a fight that we have to take on, because we are still, despite our resurgence, losing about 4,000 people per year. And interestingly, when you look at this slide that you have on your screen here, we really stem the tide in out-migration. That is, people who are from here who have left here. But we have not been able to move the needle on immigration, people who move here and elect to move here for choice. And until we do, we've really got a challenge on our hands. So I just will put a little commercial here in saying that in the Buffalo Niagara Partnership's advocacy agenda, we are advocating for increased tourism promotion. This is really one of the reasons why we've got to tell our story outside the market and really empower Visit Buffalo Niagara to do even more with an already incredibly talented group of people we have messaging about our region. I'm also happy to say that when we look at inbound marketing of our region and getting people to move here, that our sister organization, Best Buffalo Niagara, has developed a very comprehensive talent attraction strategy. They've actually expanded their mission beyond just attracting businesses to the region, but really putting a strategy to attract people back to our region. And I would encourage you, if you have an interest in this, to really read the strategy and some of the work they're doing on their website, which is on your screen. So let's move on and take a look at what survey respondents told us when it comes to searching for housing. In terms of home buying, it's certainly been a seller's market. But as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we've seen a number of new rental projects completed throughout the city, and including the neighborhoods North Buffalo, around Elmwood and Forest, and quite a bit of development, transit-oriented development off of the main subway spine in Buffalo, the only subway spine in Buffalo. But people, young people in particular, would like to use public transit, and we've seen some really great development along there. The top factors that our survey respondents told us that they were looking for were price and affordability, safety, and proximity to work. And other factors were things like amenities, parking, walkability, access to green space, school district they're in, access to shopping, the diversity of a neighborhood, and access to public transit. What is it with these young people? They want it all. Well, I don't blame them. Moving on, let's take a look at the demographics of our survey respondents. Our survey respondents fall into three broad demographic profiles, and I'm going to go over them with you now. But I just want to say that in all the profiles, well over 90% of all of the profiles recommend us as a region, as a place to live and work. So the first segment is lifelong residents. A full 60% of our survey respondents are lifelong residents, people that are born here and have stayed here. And 95% of them would recommend the region to elsewhere. Of our survey respondents, the majority of them live in the city or the north towns, and nearly 90% possess a bachelor's degree or higher. This is a place where you'll see the survey respondents skew differently than the region at large. The second segment are boomerangs, or people who left the area and have since returned. 94% of them would recommend our region, and no surprise, the majority of them cited family as their reason for returning. The majority of these people also live in the city or the north towns, and again, 90% are highly educated with a bachelor's degree or higher. But what stood out to us here is that 100% of the survey respondents in this group identified themselves as being white. And that speaks, we think, potentially to the socioeconomic barrier that boomerangers face as they consider relocating, or something that the respondents of color mentioned in the survey, which is the brand and image of Buffalo. You have to ask yourself, are these two things related? Do boomerangers not believe they can see themselves here in our region from a racial equity point of view? In any event, it begs the question that we have to dig a little bit deeper. Finally, our survey respondents, third group, identified themselves as transplants, or people who moved to our region from other parts of the state and country. 96% of them would recommend our region, and most cited work as the reason for their relocation. The majority of them came from other parts of New York State, and again, in the profile, they live in the city or the north towns. What's interesting here is this 47% of the so-called transplants possess a bachelor's degree or higher, which is less than we saw in the other two profiles. Continuing with the demographic snapshot, I'd like to take you through a quick look at how our survey respondents break down in terms of gender, racial and ethnic diversity, and the types of companies where they work and their earnings. Our results this year reflect a better balance in the percentage of respondents who identify as male or female, resulting in a more accurate picture of young professionals in our region, but again, is not completely representative. While most young professionals in the Buffalo region work for for-profit corporations, the mission-driven nonprofit sector is also attractive to younger workers. And I will say what's interesting about this, we at the partnership, we managed and help Say Yes with develop their internship program. And we see even among high school students and college students looking for internships, there's a much greater interest in not-for-profit work. Almost half of the young professionals in our region who took the survey, earn between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, well above the regional yearly income of approximately $33,000 per year as reported by the Census Bureau. That's a lot of numbers, and you're probably wondering what it all means. So in essence, when we look at the data from the Census Bureau about our population loss and combine it with the projections, we need to understand that we are facing a gap in the population of young professionals and, quite frankly, of the workforce overall. And this trend is reflected in concerns that we're hearing already from our members. For those of you who don't know, we release an annual member pulse report that's based on an annual survey of our members. And in the most recent pulse report, which you can find on our website, member organizations told us that their top concern is finding and retaining qualified talent. A full 50% told us that workforce development is a pain point right now, and 75% told us the general workforce concerns are a pain point or will be very soon. And about half tell us they struggle to achieve a diverse workforce. So you can see how all the items in our young professional survey really do, it's just a magnification of what we're experiencing in our region overall. So when you take all these data points together, it really screams to the notion that we've got to work together as a community to address it. And if we don't, this problem is not going to go away. Earlier this month, we released our 2019 advocacy agenda, which is also available on our website. And in that agenda, we detail some of the challenges that our member organizations and employers are facing and advance some policy priorities which we feel will help address those challenges. Regionally, it's important that we continue to maintain this momentum for growth and work very hard to attract and retain young professionals in the region. And here's how you can help. So this year, we developed a 6-step action plan that employers can use to create an environment where young professionals want to stay in our region. And I'm going to go over them quickly now. First off, as an employer, you can be an advocate, and we're helping you do that. On our website, we've created an advocacy tool called Voter Voice, which you can use to amplify the voice of your young professionals and have them communicate with local elected officials, which we know they want to do. Addressing the challenges we talked about today begins with awareness. And I want to thank you all for investing the time to listen today to hear about what our young professionals are concerned about. When you download the full survey report from our website, you'll also get a social media toolkit that includes some sample messaging and graphic assets that you can use to help tell our story. Investing in our region's young professionals is critical. If they're to find living in our region rewarding, we need to help them develop their skills. And we know from all the reading we've done on professionals in that category, they are very, very keyed into their own personal and professional development. and we need to assist as employers in making that happen. So we're suggesting that employers commit to increasing their professional development budget by up to 5% and to devote those resources to young professionals in their organization. The next step on our action plan is networking. And I think all of us on this webinar today recognize how meaningful relationships are key to a successful career, and particularly when many of our young professionals spend a lot of their time in a virtual environment. We want to commit to build young professionals' professional network and ask you to introduce young professionals to 10 people in your network that can help them grow professionally. We invite you to visit our website and download the Young Professionals Guide to Networking, which lists, I don't know, more than 24 young professional organizations in various interest areas that can help plug people into the community. Mentoring is another incredibly important way to help young professionals grow, and we've all had mentors that we've looked up to and have helped us over the years. So sharing your time and hard-earned wisdom is one of the best ways we can steward young professionals towards success. And quite honestly, I think if we're going to succeed as a region, if the path for the young professional you're mentoring isn't within your organization, helping them find another opportunity in our region is a way that we can really, really help the region grow. So let's all commit to planning. And I think of all the recommendations that we're making, this might be the most important. It's incredibly important that you take the time to show young professionals exactly how they personally can grow and advance in your organization and industry sector. They need to see the map, show them what their actionable 5 to 10 year career pathway is within your organization. And it's incredibly important. And by the way, we hear this not only from our own young professionals in Buffalo, but really in best practices across the country and what the needs are of young professionals in this generation. It's important to know that the partnership is actively working to advance several of the priorities that have been identified by YPs in our region, not only in our advocacy agenda, which includes 24 specific policy priorities, but through some of our programming that we do in BN 360. In addition, the partnership is very proud to be at the forefront of Employ Buffalo Niagara, an industry-led coalition with participation from more than 100 regional employers and community partners. And this coalition's work focuses on addressing challenges such as our aging regional workforce, the growing skills gap, the pipeline shortage, racial equity, and the high number of unemployed people and people living in poverty in our region. At the core of the partnership's mission is a commitment to build a stronger, more competitive, and more inclusive regional workforce. The partnership is very involved in the young professional development and engagement through our BN 360 program, which has over 1,200 young professionals engaged. And we want to thank our employers who are corporate members of BN 360. And all that means is they essentially pay a small fee for every member of their organization between the ages of 21 and 40 to participate in BN 360, and that gives all their employees exclusive free access to more than 18 events a year. And we do that because the more sticky we can create this community, the more engaged that we can get young professionals in our own future, the more ownership they feel, the more a chance we have of retaining them to have them grow their careers here. And if you want more information about that, please feel free to reach out to Rachel Herman, our BN 360 program manager. So to quickly wrap up, we know that the population of our state and region is in flux, and these changes can exacerbate an already tight workforce challenge. But this survey arms us with important information we can use to attract young professionals to the region and encourage them to not only put down roots, but to grow their families here. So we hope that you can use this survey as information to ensure that we can provide access to career growth, meaningful relationships, and opportunities that will help young professionals become our future community leaders. For more resources, head to our website where you can watch this webinar again, download the Young Professional Survey Report and Social Media Toolkit, and access our online advocacy tool. Again, I'd like to extend the partnership's special thanks to Bond, Shonick & King, the sponsor of the 2018 Young Professional Survey Report. And now I'll open it up for a few questions with the remaining time that we have. Buffalo Niagara regularly top travel lists across the country. How can we transition our top spot as a travel destination to a top spot as our destination to live? I think to really I said it earlier, but I think we need to do a better job of supporting our two organizations in our community that are working hard to externally message our community. One is Visit Buffalo Niagara, and this is in our advocacy agenda this year, is to increase tourism promotion dollars. They're out there telling our story as a great place to visit, and people who want to live here are going to visit here first. And our sister organization, Invest Buffalo Niagara, is really trying to invest in talent attraction. And I think the community needs to invest in both more in those efforts. If you look at, and in tourism, I know this just from my own previous experience, if you take Grand Rapids as an example, and we are very close to Grand Rapids in terms of demographics and community assets, et cetera, their tourism promotion budget there is double what we have in our region. So I really feel like this is something that we need to continue to advocate around. And really, it's about more than tourism. It's really about economic development. So what is being done to recruit and increase awareness of this organization to more diverse members? And this is, Mr. Johnson, thank you for your question. We really have been working to try to integrate with other affinity-based young professional organizations. And we would welcome any suggestions that you or others might have. I sit on the Racial Equity Roundtable, and our role in that work is to try to take the learnings that we are getting in that work and really roll them out to the employer community to increase awareness. But specifically, when we talk about BN360, this is a real pain point for us. It bothers me, for example, that we don't have as many, as a relative percentage of the people who took the survey, didn't reflect the community overall. And so even though our recruitment efforts doubled the number of participants, we still aren't representative to the community at large. So if you have suggestions, please send them off to me, or you can email me personally at dgc@thepartnership.com. Thank you for that. Buffalo recently ranked top 10 for millennial home buyers in the country. How does that impact our young professionals coming and going? I think it's a great message. I think particularly in cities that are very competitive for young people. I will tell you that the cost of my son lives in Chicago, and the cost of living is extremely, extremely high. So we are quite the bargain. In places like San Francisco and Boston, young professionals can't even dream about buying homes. So I think it's great messaging for us, and we just need to capitalize on it. As I said, I've said this many times. Earned media is not a sustained marketing strategy, so we've got to find a way to really market the region more comprehensively overall. So are there individual BN360 membership opportunities? Thank you, Moila, for your question. Yes, individuals whose companies are not members of the partnership can, just for $50, get access to all 18 of those events, and I believe we have details on our website on how to do that. Okay, we have one more question, and this question is, what are some barriers to career growth opportunities there are for young professionals? I mean, there are some natural barriers, I think. We have a lack of corporate headquarters as an example. So people who have a very specific area of interest, for example, my daughter wants to do economic development in third world countries. She's not going to be able to work in Buffalo and do that. So I think there are some natural barriers there. But I think a lot of the barriers that we see are perception. We focus group some young professionals, and some of the concerns they raised were, that their age was a barrier in order for them to get promoted. But when we talk to employers, they're really looking to promote young talent. So I think, again, the best barrier we can remove is helping individuals on an individual basis really look at their career path within an organization and don't assume that they understand what that is. I believe we are out of time, and I want to thank you and Von Schenek and King once again for your time and energy, and look forward to a continuing dialogue. Thank you.